Well, you got to love that dramatic music, that crescendo, right when we hit the image with Russ Hedge in that little intro video. Yeah, I am D. Scott Smith, a motivational listener here live at 12:30. I just heard my clock bing. Here on Amazon Live, part of the author interview series. I'm really excited because today we get to have Paul Edwards as our guest. And he has written a book. Actually, he's written several books. Actually, he's written, I don't know how many books Paul's written, but we're going to find out. But the one we're talking about today is Influencer Networking Secrets. And with that, Paul, tell people who you are, what's going on in your world, and let's just get this started. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too, Scott. I was going to say, if you're just half excited to be hosting the show as I am to be appearing on it, then I'm twice as excited as you, I reckon. But,
I love it.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And be doing math, but
well, we got to do some theater of the mind stuff to get people to what?
There you
go.
go.
How does that? Yeah, they got to get that side of the mind working. So, yes, I'm delighted to be here and very, very busy with the privilege of leading a ghostwriting agency that I've started and I'm beginning to scale right now. Over the past year and a half, have a great team working underneath me, and we're working on a lot of great projects right now. And in between, when I have the moments and the time to do it, I'm out promoting my book and promoting a highly relational style of acquiring business through quality relationships, through referrals and recommendations from people who are your biggest raving fans. And over the last 8 years, I've built 3 different businesses now, mainly through that mechanism. And that's what the book is all about.
You know, I love it because those of us that are in the digital space, the way the tagging works and all these ads will start following you around. And we're always being led toward, I'll say, digital advertising. And digital paid advertising, or we'll hear lots of funnels and all these different types of tools out there. But for so many of us, really all we need is a handful of customers. And when I talk to small businesses, and it's probably the same for you, when you ask them, how do you get your best customers? They often say it's from referrals. It's through word of mouth. It's through those business relationships.
Yep. Yeah. I am a huge proponent of Facebook ads or digital media if it makes sense for your business. If it won't overwhelm you, for example, if a funnel actually does what it should and you get hundreds of new leads and you're prepared to respond to them, knock yourself out. I mean, I'm in favor of it, and I'll cheer for your success. But there are a lot of people where the volume of an individual customer is such that if you had even 10 new customers, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. If that happened to me, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Right. I need to acquire them step by step and take my team through the process. Now, over time, we may be able to respond to an increasing number at the same time. But where it stands right now, we're still very much organic growth. and I find that I myself am the best living, breathing commercial or advertisement for my agency that I know of.
Right. Yeah, that's the truth is that you would get overwhelmed. I know that if you were doing something that's fully automated, so if you have courses or you're selling books and it's just get as many clicks as you can, buy the books, that's wonderful. But if you're providing a service, so if you're a tax accountant, you have a limited capacity. If you're an
Yep.
individual coach or a mentor, you have a limited capacity. Even many manufacturing operations, they have limited capacities. And so being able to fill your customer base full of uh, quality leads and quality referrals through those who have done business with you, as they say,
Hmm.
know, like, and trust, right? That's where we find our best referrals and those best customers.
Yep. Yep. I call it acquiring your own unpaid sales force.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about the journey of writing the influencer networking secrets. I know you also have a podcast by the same
Hmm.
name. And so that's a great place if people want to get in to hear a little bit more of what's going on inside your brain and the great guests that you have. Very smart folks that come on there, very generous to share their information. And but let's talk a little bit about the journey. How did you get the? People always want to ask authors, how do you get inspired? What was it that started you into this?
Mm.
Maybe a tough question.
Not really, because what I write about in the book are conversations or actual experiences where all of a sudden, sometimes in the blink of an eye, incredible things were happening, and I couldn't quite figure out why at the time. But
Mm,
as I thought about it, I said, "Oh, I see what I did there," because I could contrast it with the countless ways I'd done it wrong. And so, when I tell people, the titles of the chapters of my book are a handful of distinct operating philosophies that I carry around in every relationship I build. And the reason I do that, so I do this, even just meeting people in non-business situations, but especially in business situations. I do that. I carry with me what I write about in the book. It's not just a series
mm,
of ideas or rules or anything like that. It's how I actually live my life. And when you live this way, in what I call the spirit of the radically generous entrepreneur,
mhm,
what begins to happen almost seems to materialize out of thin air, and you don't even know how it happened.
mm,
But you can't take away from the fact that leading up to that are a thousand little small steps of giving of leading with a giving hand, not demanding or expecting anything in return, not chalking it up to their account, but kind of trusting God to handle the remuneration to you. And I over a while it just kept happening to the point that I was like, this is not an accident, this is not a coincidence, and these events are not disconnected from one another.
mm.
So I can, there's examples in the book. I can even tell about some of them, but the inspiration, the material was already there. I just needed language for it. And as I thought about it more and more, I found language for it. I found phrases and words to describe it.
Yeah, this whole concept of the radically generous entrepreneur, this is something that you've promoted well before the book. This is I think a concept that I don't know. Maybe the phrasing certainly originates with you. I don't know if the overall concept does, but certainly this phrasing. But can you break that down a little bit? What is a radically generous entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's easily misinterpreted. A lot of people think it's a guy who writes enormous checks to foundations and stuff like that. Which
Right.
there are people like that who qualify in this category as well, right? I'm not precluding them simply because that's the stereotype, but that's usually not who I'm referring to.
Mm,
Um, See, generosity it can be with your treasure, with your money, but it can also be with your time and with your talent. Um, And that's why I tell people that even if you're starting a business broke, even if you don't have a gigantic network, even if you don't have, you feel like I don't have the skills, or I don't have the pedigree, or I don't have the loud extroverted personality, or I don't have the cash, or I don't have the budget. None of that matters in this case.
Hmm.
You come with built factory installed uniqueness that is
Factory
formed and
installed uniqueness. There's a tweetable for you.
yeah, fact, yeah, exactly. And that factory installed uniqueness is molded and shaped, and in some cases still requires a lot of work. In other cases, you're really strong
Hmm.
in certain areas of life where other people are not very strong. They're weak. They're like, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
And if you understand the concept of magnetism, right, you understand that magnets either attract or repel,
Hmm.
right? So if you pay attention to the people who keep getting attracted to you, right, you'll begin to notice what are the common things that where they're weak and I'm strong, and also where I'm weak and they're strong. What is this telling me about myself that puts me in the position to become a radically generous entrepreneur? Because of course, whatever your talent is, there are plenty of people out there who need it, want it, and will pay for it,
Hmm.
right? But when you don't have any reputation, when you don't have any marketing budget, and when you don't have a clearly defined offer yet, the next best thing you can do is go and do it for free
Right.
and give it away and teach it and share it. So long before I wrote this book, long before I was appearing on shows or selling books or promoting myself with the book, I understood these principles, and I would teach them for free in networking seminars that we would do at
Hmm.
networking groups. And I would tell people the same thing then that I tell them now, because these are eternal, they don't change, and they apply to every generation. They apply to both genders, they apply to all races and religions. I've tried this on too many people of too many different backgrounds for it to possibly be, you know,
Hmm.
unique or have an expiration date.
Yeah, it's just there's a couple of things that come to mind. One of them was if you listen to the story of Simon Sinek, and many of us are familiar with his TED Talk. It's one of the most popular TED Talks is TEDx Puget Sound. Actually, that's fairly close to your area there. You're
Yep.
in Tacoma area, right?
Yep.
Roughly, yeah,
Nearby there. Yep.
yeah. And so his TEDx talk from Puget Sound, one of the most popular of all time. And of course, he has the book Start With Why. So a lot of people will kind of gravitate toward his material and his success. But in his story, he talks about where he, if you will, discovered this concept that became Start With Why. And people would invite him over to their house or to their
Mm,
business. And he wasn't selling them the book. The book hadn't even been written. He
yep.
wasn't selling any courses. He didn't have any courses to sell, but he had something that was valuable, and it was changing people's lives and changing people's businesses. And
Hmm.
so this really goes along with your radically generous entrepreneur who this is how we start. We look at his success and we say, oh, this is wonderful. I wish I could do that. Well, could
Yeah.
you go over to Paul's house and share your ideas?
Yeah. Yeah. Could you show up um, and volunteer with a nonprofit?
Hmm.
Could you mentor young people? Could
Right.
you could you go and help people who don't really have a way of paying you back? And by that, everybody thinks that the poorest of the poor. It doesn't have to be them.
Hmm.
It could be anybody who is struggling or having difficulty making sense of things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurs at the core, we get paid to solve people's problems or people's pains or frustrations, right? We
Hmm.
get paid to help them overcome their problems.
Right.
So doing it for free is simply the tuition bill of getting paid to do it eventually.
Yeah. Interesting thing. And the other story that comes to mind around this was there's this, I will say it's a mistaken belief that if you tell people what you do, then they'll just do it and they won't hire you. So they won't buy your book. They won't enroll in your courses. They won't come to your seminars or workshops or whatever it is that you have for sale, because you've given it to them. And I say that that's a mistaken attitude, and it comes down to there's another video out there that was put together by the magicians Penn and Teller, and it's probably just a video of their stage act. And so one of the most famous sleight of hand tricks is the cup and ball. So they have 3 cups, and then there's a ball they put underneath it. And of course, everywhere where you think it should be, it's not. And then it's 3 balls, and then it's a big one, and then it's right. And they're just kind of manipulating these things. And it's an amazing trick. It's sleight of hand, and they're very good at it, and it's fun to watch. So they then go into slow motion, and they go step by step, and they say, this is what you do, and this is how you hide it in your hand, and this is how you move it, and here's the misdirection. And they go step by step.
Yep.
I still can't do it. Then they do it again with clear cups, so you can actually see. And you're just like, you have told me exactly what you do. You have shown me step by step what you do. You've taken away all the veils, and still, I would hire Penn and Teller. They would, because they are masters of what they do. And so when you share information about networking or whatever your expertise is that people can hire you for, you're still the Penn and Teller of your expertise. So I love this whole concept of the radically generous entrepreneur.
I do too. And it's funny, as you were saying that, Scott, I was thinking, I have a unique privilege in this regard, because I belong to one of the few professions that you can't do by yourself. You cannot ghostwrite your own book, right?
That's right.
It's a misnomer, right? Having said that, though, people will attempt, right, or people will be tempted to think that if I share the secrets of ghostwriting, other people will just people who otherwise might become clients will say, oh, okay, that's how you do it, then I'll just go off and do it myself. Not going to happen.
Yes.
Way too painstaking a process.
Right? I say that
it's not everyone can write. That's hard to understand. It's the applied information that's hard to understand.
As I say, not everyone can write. But everything needs to be written. Anytime you go to a website, anytime you pick up a package, somebody had to write that. And I was driving through California last summer, and the Caltrans had a big billboard up, one of those changing billboards, and it says, drunk drivers call, and then it listed a toll-free number. Well, once again, there are no drunk drivers that are going to be calling that number, turning themselves in. And so again, there is a huge example just proving that most people, even Caltrans, need to hire a professional writer.
And that's the thing, is like, in the book, I tell people, information is cheap in today's age. I can tell you every step and every process we follow for writing content or writing a book and all that. At the end of the day, you need way more time and way less than you already have on your list to even begin to pay attention to it, much less understand it, and then do it enough times that you have muscle memory and 10,000 hours behind the keyboard on that. Way simpler to hire my team and have them do it, because that's all they do all day long. Right. So it's buying back that speed that you want. But anyway, that's a different conversation. So
well, it's really interesting, because time to market is huge. Back in my corporate days, we were working with some customers, and one of them was the Coca-Cola company, and they were very interested in time to market. because they were saying if they can get a product, flavored water or energy drink or whatever, if they can get it to market 3 to 6 months before PepsiCo does,
Mhm.
it could be potentially worth billions of dollars to them, just those few months. So when you're talking about time to market, yeah, there are people who have manuscripts partially written on the shelf somewhere that someday they're going to get to.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about why would somebody want to have a book anyway? I mean, I mean, maybe you have something to say, maybe not, but what kind of folks would write a book?
Well, a book gives you a number of things, but primarily, I would say that um, uh, whenever you're talking to a human being, right? C.S. Lewis has that quote: "You've never talked to a mere mortal,"
Hmm.
and there is a ton about you that I don't know, right? Now, maybe you and I are dear friends and all that, so that is important to me. Maybe to the next person, that's not so important. But there's always going to be somebody who is interested in what you have to say, what
Hmm.
your experiences are, um, your the agony and the ecstasy, as you will, as if you will, of your life, of your experience in this particular, sport or business or entertainment venue or whatever, right? There's always going to be people like that. The infinite variety of the internet is proving that, and that's why we say riches are in niches, right? Because
Yep.
they're
Hmm.
just there's just an endless variety of niches. um, so okay, maybe you can't be a global bestseller, but you can be a bestseller among people who are interested in you,
Hmm.
how your mind works, and how it applies to whatever it is you do. So that's a very broad based. Now let me narrow it down. Some people want to write a book because they want to leave a legacy of who they are and how they think and what it was like to be them at the time they were living to their posterity, right? To their
Hmm.
descendants.
Yeah,
That can be a
the part
reason.
of your body of work that you pass
Mhm.
on. I love it.
Yeah. My dad has left voluminous writings. Not
Mm.
surprisingly, I come from a family of writers on his entire life, so that I know intricate details of his upbringing, his childhood, the locations, his relationships, schools he attended,
Wow.
work jobs he worked. I know his story very, very
Wow.
well.
What a treasure.
And so when my sons are old enough to be interested in that, it's not a mystery to me. Um, so that's one reason, right? But another,
Mhm.
a very common reason with our clients has more to do with building influence
Mhm.
and creating new opportunities many times, as an emblem of your authority and your expertise. And so, the conventional, right, we can go and hand people a business card, and there's nothing wrong with business cards, right? I'm not knocking them. um, but you can say something very different about yourself if you've written a book. You can say, the subject that you read in this book, I am an established authoritative expert in it. And to prove it, I went to the trouble of writing and publishing a book that I now put in your hands, that is as a demonstration of the knowledge base that I have in this particular subject.
Mhm.
So when I hand people influencer networking secrets, I'm telling you, I know the secrets of how to network with influencers and how influencers network, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
That's
telling
fabulous.
you right there because you can do it too. I want you to be able to network with influencers the way network with them, because look what's happened to my life, right?
Yeah. I'm telling everyone that's watching this, you got to click on the book. Click on the book, Influencer Networking Secrets. You can take a peek inside and kind of look at the topics on there. But it's as you say, a book gives you just an amount of cachet, right? There's something about being able to, if you're going to be a speaker on stage, to be
Hmm.
introduced as author of is
Yep.
pretty wonderful. Uh, even if you're not going to get up on that stage, just to be introduced to an individual and to say author of is,
Hmm.
you can put that on your business card, hand those out as well. Um, there was a great there's a writer, guy named John Nemo, and
Hmm.
he's written about LinkedIn. That's his area. And we were at this conference together. It was down in San Diego, Social Media Marketing World, and he was going to be one of the featured speakers in one of the breakout sessions. And speaking about, of course, LinkedIn. So,
Right.
what did he do? I think it was, so it's a 2-day conference, 3-day conference. Anyway, he was speaking later on. So the first, he got one of those flight cases that the
Hmm.
pilots carry around,
Yep.
and got hundreds of copies of his books, and he had them shipped to the hotel where he was staying. Then he loaded them
Yep.
up into this thing, and he was going around. And instead of handing out business cards, he was introducing himself, saying, "I'm John Nemo. I'm speaking at this time tomorrow about this. Here's a copy of my book."
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he packed the room with people, um, and he offers services. So he more than paid for his books and everything, um,
Yep.
with the work that he got out of it. So
Hmm.
certainly got his value out of his book. So I really like what you're talking about with the influence. And so so maybe a little bit. So there can be a couple of things looking at the your body of work, leaving some sort of a legacy. I love that idea, especially to me, if you can turn it into an audiobook and
Hmm.
do the recording yourself. Now, not
And
everyone's
people
got
hear your
Paul Edwards'
voice.
voice, but being able to hear your own father's voice telling those
Hmm.
stories would be pretty
Yep.
fabulous. And so I like that.
Yeah. And here's another thing, Scott, that I think is important. Perhaps not as important as those two categories, maybe a secondary type of thing. But actually,
Mhm.
if you are attempting to get things like publicity, speaking opportunities, right, all that kind of stuff, what writing a book forces you to do, at least the way we do it, um, we do a good mixture of long form chapters like you would normally find in a book, but we also employ our copywriter to come and take a look at each section title and say, does that section title pop, right? Does it,
Mm.
in other words, make a reader say, "Oh, I better find out what this is about," right? Or is it just, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, right?
Yeah.
That language is important. What I mean by that is that you will distill your ideas, right? Like I've distilled my ideas. So chapter 1 is called Be a Magnet, Not a Pusher, right?
Mm.
Chapter
Hmm.
2, Pro Bono Publicity. Chapter 3, Not for Profit is for Profit. Chapter 4, How to Network with Dream Connections. Chapter 5, Be Persuasive in Print. Chapter 6, Become a Curator, right? These are all phrases that I've
Mm.
developed that sort of paint the picture.
Right.
But when I'm going to, when I'm submitting to be featured as a speaker somewhere, or people ask me, "Can you send along your press kit and all that?"
Mm.
I can put those as short bullets and put a brief explanation underneath if I need to say, "This is what I'm qualified to speak on. These are my key core concepts where I have a lot of authority. If your audience would be interested at all to know about these things, I'm your man." And they say,
Mm.
the right people say, "My audience is interested to know about those things. You're hired."
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I always thought that the chapters of a book, the table of contents, should be a great outline. I should just go, oh my gosh, look what's coming up, and I see the steps and the process that I'm going
Hmm.
through. Because ideally, especially if I'm reading some sort of a self help business book, something where there's an outcome I want to see what's that outcome and what's that journey. How are you? If if I pick up influencer networking secrets and I'm going to go through, what is it that I'm going to get at the end? What am I going to do? How am I going to be? How's my life going to
Yeah.
be better?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's a tug of war for me, the order of the chapters that I originally did, and the reason is, The last chapter, the curator, I think belongs both at the front and the back of the book, because it's useful
Yeah.
to decide ahead of time, this is how I want to show up, and this is how I do not want to show up.
Hmm.
This is who I want to attract, and this is who I want to repel. This is who I want to hire into my agency, and this is who I don't want working anywhere near me, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, if you're a rookie, you don't have that luxury, right? You got to try it out on as many people as you can until you find out what works and what resonates. And so it's also a good thing to have once you've gone through all those steps and said, okay, now I've got all these people and I've figured out who is really generating good reciprocity with me versus who's just,
Hmm.
a taker and not returning, not thinking about me. And so those people, I'm going to be kind and polite, but I'm not going to pursue relationship with them. And these people over here who are big givers and are very reciprocal, I'm going to sow deep into those relationships.
Right. Yeah. I often say that this is the best time ever to be alive because the
Yeah.
barrier to entry is just your willingness to participate. If you always dreamt about being on the radio, start a podcast. If you
Yep.
always wanted to be on the screen, uh, do live video, like right here on Amazon. The
Yep.
time is right. And if you have anything to say and you thought you wanted to write a book, this is the time to do it because you don't need an agent, you don't need a publisher. You can publish it right here on Amazon. They don't even charge you anything to publish
Yep.
your book. There's my clock again. So we don't even need you don't need any of the traditional uh, gatekeepers to
Right.
prevent you from publishing your book. It's easy for people. I mean, they can just go to kdp.amazon.com, Kindle Direct Publishing, sign up, download their little program that formats the book, upload it, and hit publish. I mean,
Yep.
it's just, are you willing to do that? But
Yep.
the writing of a book, I think Stephen King one time said that he would get these offers from people who says, "Hey, Stephen, tell you what, I'll give you the book idea, you write it, and we'll split the profits." So the ideas are easy, right? And we say
Mhm.
ideas without execution are worthless. But
Yep.
the writing of a book may be a little daunting for people, and of course, that's why your business exists. So let's talk a little bit about the process. If I had this great concept, I wanted to share a story or some things or my memoirs, something that's going to help people out. And I come to Paul Edwards because, oh, my friend Scott introduced me. Paul's the guy you need to talk to. What
Mhm.
happens?
I'm glad you asked that question because I think in order to do it proper justice in answering, I need to set something up a little bit. Um, what I think most people think about when they think about writing a book is sitting quietly by themselves at a desk, relaying their story.
Hmm.
The problem with doing that in solitude and isolation, as it's historically been presented, Hemingway sitting out there in some shack in the woods, tapping away on a typewriter. The problem with that is that your life is actually the summation of the input and effects and contributions of tons of other
Hmm.
people, right? You are never the lone ranger character in your story. You are
Right.
the lead character in your story, but you have a supporting cast, right? So now, I'm not trying to say we gather everybody from your past, present, and future life into the same room so we can write the book. What I am attempting to say is that book writing is done far better in numbers.
Hmm.
And that's why I don't write alone and I have the team I do. So you asked about the process. The process, there's usually a couple of conversations, really quality conversations that lead up to it to understand where when this book finds its way into the hands of its target reader and they read it, what's the next thing that they do?
Hmm.
Do they just put it on a shelf and forget about it, or if there's a good chance they might pursue, you know, getting closer to you as by
Hmm.
virtue of what you've communicated to them? do you want to facilitate that, right? Do you want to give them a link or an address or a website, something that tells them, if you like what you read and you want more, click here, go here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're always curious, what's the end game here? What's the point of writing this book, right? Because unless it's a legacy thing where you just want to have a handful of copies of it to pass down to your great grandkids, you got to have some idea of an objective of what people
Right.
are supposed to do with it once they get it.
Right.
We can work backwards from there. Once we know, oh, I want to get more speaking engagements, I want to get more business, I want to get, I want to go and hobnob with this group of people, and this positions me more authoritatively. Okay, right? We can do that. Once we know
Mm-hmm.
the objective of that, the next object of the game is to find out ahead of time what the people you are trying to reach are already online mumbling and grumbling about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're saying, with the subject where
Yeah.
you have expertise, I don't know how to do this. This process is frustrating. This is painful. This is too much to think about. I don't have time for this. I don't have the money. I don't. If they're online somewhere, we find them
Mm-hmm.
and we take careful note of what they say and how they say it. And then we answer it in your manuscript. We address them directly so that when they pick up that book and they read it, they say, I was just wondering that the other day. How did you know? Right. Following that, this is
Yeah.
the beauty part. Like, all of this is happening in the background. So you're focusing on your business, right? Let's say you're an attorney or a physician of some kind, and you're just doing what you do, right? All of this is happening in the background. And then we condense this process that would otherwise take hours and hours and days and weeks, months, even years, right?
Sure.
And we
Yeah.
say, let's get on a call. We can do it in 1 hour. We can do blocks of 2. If all you got is 1 day, we can do a day-long session, right? But that's not a good idea, by the way, because there's always more that comes after that. But if that's what you have, right, then we
Right.
do that, and then we say, okay, when's the next day you're available, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that process is a lengthy, very close listening and copious note-taking interview process
Mm-hmm.
that draws out of you questions that make you remember stuff that you forgot that you know. Right. I've had clients tell me that over and over again. You asked me stuff and I forgot that I knew the answer to that. I forgot
Mm-hmm.
that I'd had this experience until you asked me about that.
Right.
I didn't even know I needed to write that story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because you were trying to do it by yourself. And then, you add in the team, right? So now my team comes along and they've got their perspectives and their questions and they're reading between the lines and they're
Mm-hmm.
saying, what about this? And do we have an answer for that? Right. And it just becomes this huge collaborative catharsis for people. And then, of course, we're facilitating with the publishers. So all of your formatting and your publishing and getting it on Amazon and getting it, making it an Amazon bestseller. And if you want to go for New York Times or Wall Street Journal bestseller, we've got relationships for that too. We have all of that close at hand. We find the right publisher, the right outlet through which to put that. And we facilitate that. And so all of the accoutrements that come with that, the cover design, the cover copy,
Mm-hmm.
the acknowledgement section, the praise for section, all of this stuff, we think about that all in advance. And we give you, this is your homework. There's a couple things that only you as the author can do. The rest of it, we'll handle it. And then we just deliver that manuscript. Usually it's between 30 to 50,000 words. It's scrubbed.
So 30
it's
30 to
seen by,
50,000 words. How many pages would that in a standard printed book? What would that come out to be?
it's a good question. Usually 100 to 120 pages.
Okay. All right. So a manageable book to read.
Correct.
So I could get down and I could, maybe a session or two kind of go through that book, get the content out of it. So that seems pretty good. So I like the way I like this when you talk about lots of listening. Of course, as a motivational listener, and I say my goal, the goal of being a motivational listener is for the person that you're talking to leave that conversation feeling better about themselves and before they entered that conversation. And that really ties directly right into what you were talking about, people forgetting what they know. And this is a part of the in my book, which is out there as well, was the first half is really around the brain science, and it talks about how we connect and how we learn. And one of the things is that um, when we repeat things, they literally become hardwired into our brain. And so it takes
Yep.
very little energy to recall that information. And the good of that is that we can recall information really easily. So I can say, Paul, what do I need to do to have a podcast like your podcast, Influencer Networking Secrets? And you don't have to Google up, you don't have to go to your reference books, you don't have to take your notes. You can just say this, and this, and you have a
Hmm.
podcast, which is wonderful. But the problem is, the downside of this is that um, it almost feels like, isn't this common knowledge? But you
Yep.
weren't born knowing how to podcast. You weren't born knowing how to write. You weren't born
No.
knowing how to promote books, how to pull this information out. But over time, it's become hardwired into your brain. And so when people ask you, "Oh, how do we write?" "Oh, you just do these interviews and you take these notes, and these are the things you're looking for, and this is how you're doing." And then, presto, changeo, here's a 120 page book
Yep.
ready for your edit.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't happen that way. It's not. I will just say that what we know, although we feel like it's common knowledge because we just breathe it out, what you know is not common. And so when you probably take those people through that exercise, as you said, they surprise themselves at how
Hmm.
much knowledge they have.
Yeah. The mistake we have made for a long time now is to assume that the value of the service I provide is in
Hmm,
my knowledge of the mechanics of the language, of how the publishing industry works, right? And I'm not devaluing that. I'm not
sure.
saying that that isn't important. But what is of primary importance, right? Scarcity creates enormous value.
Hmm.
And what could be less scarce than the unique stories, experiences, painful moments, moments of joy that come together to make your life. No one else can live your story, right? Not the way you've lived it. They can live parallel things, they can live
Sure.
similar things, but they can even live through, like me with my military brothers, right? We live through exactly the same things,
Hmm.
but each one of us processed it differently and has a different way of looking at it. And that's the true gold right there. That's the scarcity. But if you are attempting to get all this out of your system in a
Mm.
closed room by yourself, sorry, it's not coming. It's not coming
Yeah.
because we don't. That's not how we're wired. We
Hmm.
can't regurgitate everything we've ever taken in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. It's just kind of blowing the image away that says, oh, we should just rent a hotel room or get an island in the South Pacific and take some writing instruments and come back with a book. It's we'll probably just come back with more blank pages and
Yeah.
frustrated that we didn't accomplish what we wanted.
Yep. Yep. A friend of mine gave me a hard time when I first started writing books. He, I guess there's some stereotype out of there, from like the Jack Kerouac era that writers are alcoholics. So he started giving me a hard time and saying, "So are you drunk now all the time?" and that maybe that you might come back with a drinking problem too. Is all I'm saying. So
Well, yeah, yeah, okay. The old man in the sea, right? You just
that's it. The old man
so
in the sea, and I played right along with it with my neighbor who was giving me a hard time about that. Every time I showed up after that, I stagger a little bit. Hey,
just yeah. Oh my word, yeah. It's a clear brain is going to help you in translating those thoughts onto paper.
Mhm.
I just love this whole process of being able to put together a book, being able to share your information, being able to use it to promote yourself, like John Nemo did, to great success. And I think, when you're looking at buying your own book in those not hardbound, but in paperback copies, there's not that much expense to it. Um,
Yeah.
Compared to what you can get out of it in return. So, uh, entrepreneurs are always looking at the return on investment. What am I going to get back? And
Yes.
and this is where I think your whole concept with influencer networking secrets, and this is kind of back where we started, is that the most efficient form of marketing is your network.
Yeah.
And um, I contend that most people out there already have the network, because with this past year and COVID and all this stuff, people say, "Oh, we can't network." And I said, "You know what? You can network, but you don't necessarily need to. You already have a great network.
Hmm.
You just need to lean into that network and provide some value." So this goes back to the whole radically generous entrepreneur. So write your book and then give it away. I mean, you can give
Yeah.
it, you can sell it if you want, but you can use it as an entrance in,
Yeah.
and let the people know what problem you solve, who your ideal customer is, and let them go from there. They want, everybody that knows Paul Edwards wants Paul to succeed.
Hmm.
And so if you just tell us what you need, we will be happy to help. And
Yep.
and so just going back to the whole network and kind of writing this down is, so as you write your book, what's a great way to promote it? What are great ways to promote your book?
Hmm. So you're asking me
I'm
that question?
asking I'm
Okay.
asking you because I know what's going to happen is that people are going to come to you and they're going to say, "Hey, Paul, I've got this idea. I'm down for these interviews," and then it's done, and we've written the book and it's published. But now what?
So I will tell you a couple of things that I know in this regard, Scott, because what I've learned is to ask that when something works, why does it work,
Hmm.
right? Um, so if I right now were to attempt to just do a boosted post once a week featuring my book, I probably would not get any traction from it.
Hmm.
That's not because Facebook ads don't work. It's not even because Facebook ads don't work for my book. It's because I have not done the due diligence of digging that deep into my brand
Hmm.
for the purpose of erecting a funnel to generate, new people to my list online. I don't need that much attention on what I do, but I do want to have lots of quality conversations with entrepreneurs and CEOs who are in my bullseye
Hmm.
target market,
Hmm.
which is to say, um, I need to find opportunities to be either visible, like on a podcast or a video interview,
Hmm.
or I need to show up in places where those target clients are known to congregate and add value to them.
Hmm.
So there's a broadcast wide net that I cast, and then there's a very small one that's almost like a one on one.
Hmm.
But I don't want to say this to the exclusion of Facebook ads. One of my old mentors, Rob Kosberg of Bestseller Publishing, right, uh, was very successful. His book is called Publish, Promote, Profit. And he advertised it on Facebook for years. Might still do it for all I know. Um, and it's a way of getting people to read about his book, which is, he's got an entire front to back ghostwriting, publishing, promotion, bestseller system there. And so he's reaching a lot of the people that I would like to reach too.
Hmm.
And it's a phenomenally successful campaign, right? Works. It gets him leads in and out of season. So I just want to be clear in case anybody's watching saying, Edwards, are you saying if Facebook ads don't work? No, no, not at all. They work in the right context,
Hmm.
right? And what
Right.
I do works in the right context.
Yeah.
If you are to the point where you've saturated your local market and your network, and you've talked to everybody you possibly can and got all the
Mhm.
mileage out of that and you can, then yeah, you need to invest in ads and go acquire some people who don't know that you exist.
Mm.
So, okay, now I've set up that I've set that up. Now I'll give you the pain, the painfully and the pleasant practical.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I go on shows,
Mhm.
mainly on podcasts. I've been on TV a couple times
Okay.
to
Yeah.
promote it. And the other thing that I do is I have somebody who goes and interacts as part of my agency with that target client in groups where they
Mhm.
congregate. Not to push product on them, but to strike up conversations that lead to more conversations,
Mm. Mhm.
right? So people are online all the time. They're in forums all the time. They're in Facebook threads, groups, etc., LinkedIn groups all the time, and they're talking about, you know, the struggles of doing business, the struggles of being in leadership, the struggles of steering an organization, the struggles of getting a team, to work properly, to be a well-oiled machine, the struggles of getting more prospects and customers in the door. And they're
Yeah.
talking about this. So they are advertising publicly. This is my problem. This is my pain point. This is what I need help with.
Mhm.
And if you can approach a conversation like that, or even better, you have someone who can approach a conversation like that on your behalf, um, and explain something for them.
Yeah.
The way I see it, you've opened a door for a possible reciprocal relationship,
Mhm.
and that's what I do.
Yeah. I was just thinking that going back to the Penn and Teller example is that if they had written a book on sleight of hand magic and they were on video casts and things like that, that they might come on and go, well, let's do the cup and balls thing, and then kind of go through and explain it. Um, that would, they're giving me something right there.
Yeah.
Even without buying their book, I've already gotten value. And so
Mhm.
it seems like when you're going to be going on the podcasts and things like that, that you want to be able to give people some insight into your book. Because, as books are not that expensive, but still, it I'm going to have to read it in its time. It's an investment, and I want to make sure that I'm getting the best return on my investment. And
Mhm.
so, when you're going on these podcasts and things like that, I just think you want to have you're giving something to them that's a
Yep.
snippet in their book. Um, Simon Sinek with his video in the Golden Circle. So many of us have drawn that over and over again for years as we're
Yep.
explaining to people whether or not you read the book. Although it is a great book as well, and I do recommend it to people. But when we're thinking about influencer networking secrets, what are the key takeaways that someone could look at or hear from you right now, and then go, "Oh yeah, that's the book that's gonna turn it for me. That's gonna get those customers in the door. That's gonna get me connected to the right people. Give me the influence that I want." What are some
Mhm.
of those key things that you think would be just the key takeaway for today?
I usually go with the fifth chapter of my book, which is how to network with dream connections.
Mm,
Because everybody's curious, what do you do if
yeah,
you're suddenly in front of a very prominent, influential person,
yeah.
right? What do you say to them, right? Um, and I had to learn this, Scott, as an insurance salesman, which is the number one occupation you do not tell anybody that you do, right?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe
You're not
aside
gonna
from
get invited to
mortuary,
any dinner parties.
maybe aside from the mortuary affairs guy, right? Oh, I'm the angel of death, but
Mm, that's
um,
right.
but yeah, I mean, nobody wanted to talk about insurance, and so
Right.
I went into these situations. It doesn't matter whether I don't have insurance on the agenda. Some people automatically they just assume you do.
Mhm.
I was meeting with this is a little aside. I was meeting with this lady one time, and she said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm in the insurance business," and she immediately, "Oh, we're fine, we don't want any." And I'm like, I wasn't going to sell it, but okay.
Good to know.
Yeah. But that still presented the problem. Like if I want to show up
Mhm.
in a situation where I can even if people do ask what my occupation is, it's so far down the chain of what I'm there to talk about that
Mhm.
it's nobody gives it a second thought. Then I need a compelling approach and tactical database to figure out how to
Mhm.
do that. So when I tell people this is how you network with Dream Connections, the number one rule is uh, do you need to show up you need to show up for business reasons rather than to transact business,
Mhm.
right? And when people say, well, business reasons is kind of vague, what does that mean? And I say it's the same as it goes back to
Yeah.
elementary entrepreneurship. You're there to solve problems.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I don't know what those people's problems are. Well, that's why you ask.
Mhm.
You'll find out, right?
Yeah.
They'll be happy to tell you what their
Mm,
problems are,
that's the
right?
truth.
And we'll get to
Yeah.
that in a minute. So the number one thing is you got to have a good why, right? Start with why. And my reason for being here is to help other people, to benefit other people. I trust that I will be taken care of. I'm not going to deal with what's on my agenda right now. Um, okay, so so that's my catchphrase for that is be an angler, right? But like a fly fisherman.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, anyway, I don't mean to overwhelm that, but the next thing that you do is you become a scout, a therapist, and a publicist,
Mm.
right? So scouts, if you think about a sports scout, is constantly out there looking for people for a team, right? And I'm constantly on behalf of my network looking for people
Mm.
who I say you need to meet so and so,
Mhm.
right? A publicist is the other direction. Now I'm promoting my network to someone I'm meeting.
Mm. Mhm.
So this is more like what the podcast or a YouTube interview channel or something. This is where when you're out networking, you're saying, oh, you meet someone, you say, I would love to interview you for my podcast, pro
Mhm.
bono publicity, right? But the best part of all is you become a therapist.
Yeah.
This is where I've made the most strides. And so how do you be a therapist, right? We're not talking about breaking out the tissue box and saying, tell me how you really feel, right?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
It's just an analogy, but there's
Mhm.
three big questions. And I've covered this on the tea break. You've heard them before, right? These three questions, everybody I have ever used them on,
Mm.
it works. Never
And I'm
found
just gonna
somebody
tell
who didn't want to talk about
I have heard these, and I'm gonna tell people right now, get a piece of paper and a pen because as our friend, John Lee Dumas, JLD says, there's value bombs coming. So,
it. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. So
give us those questions, Paul.
the first question is, what's going well for you lately?
Mm.
Right. And when I ask you this question, what I'm doing is I'm asking you to tell me the last few chapters of your story.
Mhm.
So I'm asking about something that is standing there in that room full of people, staring them dead in the face, and not a single one of them sees it except you. Right. And people, easily, oh yeah, yeah, this was wonderful thing happened. I got this new client. And whatever. They'll tell you, right, what's going
Mhm.
well for them lately. Second one, this is the moneymaker. What's not going so well?
Mm.
What's the hardest
That's
part of being you? What's the
yeah.
biggest challenge you're facing right now?
There's that problem that you were just talking about.
Mhm. The invisible present that
Mhm.
everyone else in that room is ignoring except you. And then we're going to go a little bit into the future. What are you looking forward to,
Mhm.
right? What's coming down the pike that you're really excited about? People got stuff like that.
I love it.
It's just nobody asks them.
Mhm.
So,
So it's kind of going through a timeline, if you will. It's like, so what's going well? That's the past, right? What have you?
correct.
What's culminated? And then it's just like, but you're going somewhere, and there's some sort of resistance that you have, and what's that problem? And
Yep.
then that final step, right? What's the future hold?
Yep.
And I love this. These are great questions.
Yeah, worked on Ebenezer Scrooge, right? The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future,
He
right?
did. He did. It made a
And, and,
tremendous
and
the hero's journey.
all we're doing there, Scott, is we're orienting ourselves to the reality of the person in front of us. They're
Right.
not just an organism,
Hmm.
right? They're a living, breathing library of stories.
Wow. Yeah.
You haven't got time to get to all of them, but you've got time to get to two or three of them,
Hmm.
right? So now that you've done that, right? There's one other thing, and I call this focus on the farm team. And this is just a reminder that before you do this in front of a very recognizable public figure, you know, a politician, a celebrity, a prominent business leader,
Hmm.
global influencer, whatever, right? Before you do that in front of them, the only way you're going to remember what to do is if you
Hmm.
practice on the regular people you meet every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to stand in front of those people and you're going to be like everybody else. Could I have your autograph? Right? And that's about all you can think of,
Hmm.
right? But when this started to happen for me, when I would get invited to these things that nobody else got invited to, and I'm hobnobbing with community leaders and CEOs and commanding generals and and then people on my podcast who have nationally syndicated shows and global best-selling authors and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, I know how to talk to these people
Hmm.
because I'm already practiced at it.
Right.
It comes second nature to me. It's how I have carry on every conversation I have.
Yeah.
So it's not this is another one of those ones that comes at the end of the list and should also be at the beginning of the list because most rookies who are trying to
Hmm.
network and get better at it, you got to start with whoever God gives you, right? You're not
Yeah.
going to start off with the president of the United States or
Hmm.
you know the the uh
That's
the
right.
Bill Gates of the
Yeah, you're
world.
gonna
So
have to work your way up to it. One of the things in my book that I talk about is when you're wanting to meet a famous person. So if you're going to a conference and you know Paul Edwards is going to be speaking there, and I want to meet Paul,
yeah,
one of the things that I recommend is I said, well, why don't you listen to his podcast? Why don't you buy his book,
yeah,
Influencer Networking Secrets? Read the book so that when you have that opportunity and you have that very short moment, you can refer to the book. You can ask a question. There's or say, I love the story that you told about. So one of the things that we have in common is that we're a part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind,
yep.
and Aaron Walker, who leads that. And you talk about some of those interactions. And for me to have read through that book and go, oh, maybe I didn't know that, but now I do. Here's something that I can key into instead of
Hmm.
being like Chris Farley on Saturday Night Live. It was like, oh, Paul Edwards, oh, you're awesome,
Yeah,
great, thanks.
yeah.
Right?
Appreciate it.
Read the book. Read the book. Listen to the podcast. Read their blogs. What is it? What is it? Something that's going on, and be prepared with those three questions. If
Hmm.
you have that much time, you may not have that
Yeah,
much time.
yeah. In one of the stories, I realize we're probably running out of time here, but one of the stories that I tell in the book is I was seeking to meet the CEO of a local tribal casino. And the reason I wanted was not to sell him insurance, but I was serving on two boards. I was on the local Miss America pageant board,
Hmm.
and I was on the local chapter of Association of the U.S. Army. So we were looking for celebrity judges for the upcoming Miss America pageant, which he
Hmm.
would have qualified here locally as one. And we were looking for
Sure.
a venue to host a charity poker cigar game. So it needed to be a venue where you could smoke indoors, right?
Right.
Very
Yeah.
few of those around.
Hmm.
And I knew that I could probably get both of those from him, or at least he had the ability to fill both of those slots. Not that I could probably get them. And I said to myself, okay, if I'm this CEO and I'm at this event and this up comes this insurance salesman to talk to me, right? What am I going to want to hear most?
Mm,
Obviously, we know it's at the bottom of the list. Hey, would you like to get a quote on your insurance? Okay,
that's
we're
right.
rubbing that
I
out.
could
That's
save you money in 15 minutes.
not okay. So we know we're not talking about insurance. Now,
Right.
the next thing is we need a venue for our poker cigar game for the to support the troops. And patriotic guy probably
Mhm.
would have said, okay, well, maybe we can cut you a deal, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Or do you want to hear, hey, we're looking for celebrity judges. Your name came up on the list. Everybody knows who you are. This is going to be a big event with tons of families and, a Thurston County to do that everybody knows about.
That's
Would you
right.
like to be a part of it? We'd be honored to have you.
Mm,
Which one do you think is going to put the biggest smile on his face?
there you go. Yeah. Lead with that,
So I
huh?
led with that. I said, and I had 30 seconds. He was on the way out the door. I said, I walked up. I said,
Mm,
I've been meaning to meet you, and the reason is I'm on the board for Miss Thurston County. We're looking for a celebrity judge. Your name came up, and wanted to see what you think about that. His face broke into this big smile, and he goes, "That sounds like fun." He gives me his card. He gives me his card. He says, "Email me. I will respond to you." That's all
yes.
he said.
See, and, because you practiced, and I
Mhm.
love, it was Wyden and Kennedy, that's advertising agency in Portland, Oregon, that came up with the best slogan, because if you want to get good at something, just do it, right?
Yeah,
The Nike slogan, just
yeah.
do it. And, I was talking with a lady that she's a speaking coach, and she
Mhm.
had the greatest phrase that said, "Practice makes permanent." Doesn't make it
Yeah,
perfect, right?
yeah.
We're never going to give you perfect, but practice makes permanent.
Mhm.
So if you practice and practice and practice, when you had that 30 seconds,
Yeah,
it may not have been perfect,
but it
but
worked.
it worked. You were able to get the words out without stumbling. And now we're a big movie family. We love movies. We often quote movies, and one of the ones that we like is Chitty Chitty Bang. Yeah, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Right.
And and so he gets the chance to promote his candy to the guy at the big candy company. And
Mhm.
so he gets in and has 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Typical elevator pitch, right? In today's
Mhm.
world, gets 30 seconds, and he didn't deliver. He hadn't
Yeah.
practiced, and
Yep.
the guy's got his watch there, and he's like, "Had your chance, muffed it out." He's gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So practice, practice. That's yeah. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. So you led with the right. You knew what was going to work, and you practiced, and then you led with that.
Well, and to close the loop, right? I email him and say, "Do you still want to do the Miss Thurston County judge thing?" He says, "Yeah, I'm in. I got the time on my calendar. Put me in. Put me with whoever I need to do to do next steps." I say, "Okay." I respond back and say, "Yep, you need to." I CC the judge's chair, and on the tail end of it, right? I said, "Oh, by the way, there's a concurrently with that, we're trying to put together this charity poker cigar tournament, and we
Mm,
thought supporting the troops, we're raising money, we're not gambling, but we're playing cards and smoking cigars, and we thought the casino would be a great place to do it if you'd be willing to donate a room for the night,
mm,
and
mhm.
we'll pay for the drinks and the refreshments and the dealers and all that." And he writes back, "Done."
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so I go to meet with his adjutant there who's in charge of the facilities and all that, and we're sitting having the discussion over when it's going to be, how it's going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And she says, okay, we get sort of to the near end of it, and she says, so tell me about you, Paul. What do you do? The question I'm not supposed to bring up. And I said,
Mhm.
oh, I'm in the insurance business. She says,
Yeah.
really? I said, yeah. She said, well, let's talk some more. Give me a call because I'm opening a business and I need an
Mm.
insurance quote. So I did get to talk about insurance.
It's, yeah, Dr. Ivan Meisner is the founder of BNI, which is probably one of the most prominent business networking groups. They live by that philosophy that says givers gain.
Mhm.
And you weren't there to take, you were there to give.
Correct.
And one of the things I like to talk about too is the difference at the competent level. There's two levels. One of them is confident, and the other is arrogant.
Yep.
And both of them are going to deliver, but the arrogant person takes, and the confident person gives. Now, you weren't there
Yes.
trying to support your family with these volunteer activities. You sold insurance to do that, but because you were confident in what you did, you were still able to win the business. I think this is probably a great time to wind down. I encourage. I'm going to put this up real quick here. I encourage you. Click on it. Buy Influencer Networking Secrets. Paul Edwards. It's a great book. Get some great stories out of there. And so, Paul, thank you for the time today. I just really appreciate you taking this time to be able to share with me and to share with everybody about your book, about your journey, and about your business. And I encourage those of you who want to write a book, write a book. If you need help, contact Paul Edwards.
Scott, I'm honored. I'm grateful. You did a fantastic job interviewing. It was a great conversation. I would love to do it again sometime soon.
We
But in the
will. We will
meantime,
again. We will again. So with that, I'm going to send us out of here. But if you hold on just a moment, and so again, influencer networking secrets. It is in the carousel. Go ahead and click on that. Add it to your cart. You will be happy. And this is D. Scott signing out.